Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday Live. So, I was trying to talk to you this week just about something that happened to me recently, and I wanted to talk about perseverance because it's a story that I kind of I just touched on in my speech because I won an award on Saturday night. And a lot of people said to me, "Oh, I didn't know that about you." So I thought it might be a good idea to give you a little bit more of an idea about the story behind what actually happened and why having that sense of perseverance and being able to, continually um, pick ourselves up and move ourselves forward in business, why it's actually really quite an important thing to do. So before we go any further, if you're watching live today, it'd be really great if you could put in the comments below, just type in the word live. And if you're watching this later on and you're watching the replay, if you still could please put in the comments and just note that you're watching the replay, because it's just useful for us to know if you're watching it, at which time you're watching it. And then also what we'll do is come back, if there are any other comments, even later on when you're watching the replay, we'll come back and actually be able to have a look at those comments and be able to answer any questions that people might have in relation to all of this. So I think it's a really important thing to, when we come back to this idea of perseverance, I want to just sort of give you a little bit of a backstory, but I kind of wanted to celebrate something first, which was my little award. So here it is. It's the Altitude Award for 2021, which I won for excellence in science and technology. And it was actually with regards to the technology platform that I built back in 2017, which is called REMDR, or REM Doctor, or whichever way you want to pronounce it, it doesn't matter. But it basically is a platform that allows therapists to deliver remote EMDR therapy, or deliver that EMDR therapy online. And I pioneered the development of online EMDR therapy at a time when nobody wanted to know anything about it. And it was interesting because I still remember going to the States in 2017 and launching the product, and lots of people were coming and kind of going, "Oh wow, that's amazing," all these therapists that thought it was a fantastic idea. But at the time they were all kind of like, I'm like, "Great, do you want to try it?" And they're like, "Oh no, 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 not us. No, we like to see our clients face to face." And at the time I was kind of like, "Yeah, but it would be good if you had the flexibility, right? Maybe for whatever reason clients might move away or something might happen." And in fact, when I first developed the software, that was one of the things that I developed it for, because in Australia we actually have people that, we can live a long way away from each other. And I initially tested it out with a client who'd actually moved to North Queensland. And so that was an awful long way from me. And they really needed some support and wanted to continue doing therapy. And we're talking about flying back and forth. And I'd had this idea in the back of my mind, and then I sort of set about trying to make it work. And at the time that was all okay, went and launched in the States. I poured an awful lot of, my own money into something that was really for the benefit of everybody else, but it wasn't making huge amounts of money or anything like that. A lot of people think we put money into technology. Technology is actually very difficult to develop. And so, fast forward a couple of years, and it was still there. I presented again at another conference in 2018. And that's where I met a particular therapist from Israel. And she spoke to me at the conference, and then came up to me afterwards when I was doing my poster presentation, asking lots of questions, and then reached out to me with the view to purchasing the product, actually as a therapist who wanted to deliver online therapy. And on that basis, I had an online call with that person. And I still remember it because initially there was some connection problem. And then that was a couple of weeks later, managed to get connected with her again. And she brought her husband onto the call, and she said to me, "Oh, sorry, I don't really understand technology, but my husband, he's the technology person. And so he really needed to help me understand how to make it work." And I suppose because of the circumstances, I really just trusted that as a therapist, this woman would be telling me, honestly what it was that she was trying to do. But unbeknownst to me, they must have been using some sort of screen recording software. And they'd asked me lots of questions, and I was open and honest with them about things. And I probably, told them too much, thinking that I was in that safe space. But what's interesting about the call, and I still remember this distinctly, feeling at the beginning of the call that actually something wasn't quite right. And my gut told me that that there was something about this that wasn't really good. But because I had been really trying hard to get this product out there, and here was a therapist telling me that they wanted to use it, I think I allowed the idea that, this person would be supportive of it to override what I actually was naturally feeling, which was to be more cautious and to not necessarily show things. But I was talking to them and I got excited and I talked about stuff and I was open. And anyway, fast forward, it was good, what, more than 12 months later. And I had no idea that there were things going on in the background. As it turned out, after that call, literally, they asked me why I called it REMDR. And I told them that it was because it was remote EMDR. So they went and registered the name. Then they actually went and registered a patent over my IP in the States. Interestingly, how they did it, I don't think it's not worth the paper that it's written on. But then come 2020, and I had no idea that any of this stuff was going on. But come 2020, all of a sudden, we hit COVID. I have lots of people reaching out to me. Thankfully, we were actually in development in putting it into an online platform. Prior to that, it had been a software program. And that brought us a whole bunch of new advances. And we were able to do things that we hadn't been able to previously do when it was just a software program. And so we were in the middle of doing all of that when COVID hit. And then literally, the developer and our technology manager and I think we were, driving ourselves a bit crazy around the clock. When the rest of the world seemed to stop, we were kind of like scrambling to try and get on top of things because there were just not that I could I couldn't do a whole lot of, stuff at the computer, but I was trying to train therapists in working online and doing all of these other things. It was a lot of work, and it was a really tough time at the time that it happened. The world was already turning on its head. And then I still remember the day that I discovered these people and their platform, and what they'd done at that time was they decided to make it available to everybody for free. And I couldn't do that because our platform is secured in the highest possible way. There's no way that we can do that at no cost. And quite frankly, I just couldn't afford. Each user has an additional cost. I simply couldn't afford to put it out there for all the world to be using at my own expense. And so I tried at the time to let other therapists know that it was available to them. We had previously worked in US dollars. I even did a special thing where I gave a discount to Australian therapists at the time because we had previously operated in US dollars, and the world had gone a bit silly with all of the money stuff. And I got hate mail back from the therapists about how dare I try and make money at a time like this while the world was hurting and I was a disgusting human being and I was horrible and terrible. And I really hit a wall because I developed this to help people, right? I hadn't developed it to, make a mountain of money out of it, but because these people had essentially taken my IP and then they offered it to everybody for free at that time, everybody sort of started to see me as the villain. And yet their platform was not secure. We're talking about delivering health services on a platform that was not secure. And in fact, what they were doing to make money was they were data mining. And there was another service that popped up in the US at the same time that literally the therapist's details and the client's details were basically made available. You just logged in, you could see everything to the public. And I was heartbroken. I had worked so hard to create this platform that was really secure and do the right thing, help everybody, and trying to get it out there at a cost that was really reasonable. And all of a sudden to find that there was this competitor who was making, a really quite a, I think ours is like the Rolls Royce version, and this is like, the I don't know, cheapest fare you can buy. And I couldn't understand why people were prepared to kind of go and support somebody who had technically done the wrong thing, but I was also really hurt. And so I didn't want, I was, me trying to, I felt at the time if I just went out to everybody like I am doing now and say, hey, these people stole my stuff, that because I'd already been vilified by my own kind of, technically support organization, that I would just be vilified even more as somebody who was, horrible trying to make money at such an awful time in the world. So I said nothing. And I kept, pretty quiet about it. In fact, I think there was a couple of weeks, then I put a post on my personal Facebook to a few people. And in that, one therapist actually came back to me and Paul North, I am going to call you out on this one because it was one of the loveliest things that kind of felt like it was an olive branch at that point in time. See, I'll get upset. And he pointed me to Steve Jobs' quite amazing little with I think it was the advertising campaign about, you're different or whatever. I can't remember how they did it, but and it was the quote about "Here's to the crazy ones." So when I won the award, I basically wanted to use that in my acceptance speech because that's how it felt to me. It felt like I was, the crazy one who'd gone out and created this thing to help everybody and somehow was being vilified and, told that I'd done something horrible, like I was doing something bad. And, when I went to the IP lawyer about it, there was very little that I could do to change it. And it took me about a month, I think, before I just got to the point where I was like, you know what? They can copy everything that I'd done. Ultimately, if they were helping more people, that was really what it was about. It was never going to be the kind of product that I knew that we created, but I couldn't understand, because I'm not a marketing person either, I couldn't understand how to get the information out to the right people about what our platform actually was and what it did that was better and in comparison to that. So one of the challenges I think in all of that was being able to get to the point where I was just like, you know what, the brain stuff that I had that's able to help me work out how to do that and make it better is something that they're never going to be able to get hold of that. But going forward, it's also meant that I've been a little bit more careful and protective about my IP and, what I talk about and the stuff where I want to help people. And so that's where these days I'm a little bit more, I don't know, savvy, I suppose, about making sure that I've got people to sign off on things before I talk to them openly about what it is that I'm planning or what I want to do, because I really want to help people. But by the same token, I've literally poured $100,000 into the development of this technology. The fact that somebody else is actually making millions of dollars off the back of that is, that can be a hard thing to deal with. But the perseverance element of it is this idea. Sometimes I say to people, you know what? Some days I have hard days. I can play Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba over and over and over again, the chorus. I don't like the rest of it. I couldn't deal with it once I actually watched the video and saw what it was really about. But the idea of getting knocked down and getting back up again is something that I think is really important. And sometimes it's the people who actually support you and back you and reach out to you and give you that little pearl of wisdom at the time. When Paul North said to me, hey, Kerry, this reminds me of you and what you've done, and don't ever let anybody take that away from you. I remember every time I listened to it for about a month, I cried. Sometimes I listen to it now and I still cry, depending on what's going on, because it's this idea that despite the fact that you've done so much and trying to do so much, sometimes people perceive your motivation is different to what your motivation really is. And a lot of people will judge you and make those decisions, and then they, feel that they've got a right to tell you what it is that, you're doing, or their assessment of you as a human being because of what you've done. But in reality, I knew that what I had done was just to try and do something to help others, to improve the lives of everybody in the world. And when I accepted this award on Saturday night, I said, they can't ever get what's in my brain. They can't ever get what I'm going to do next, and what I'm going to do next is actually for the benefit of everybody. And it isn't about money for me. It's actually about the fact that we want to try and help people to help themselves, because there shouldn't necessarily there shouldn't be a reliance on psychologists or others to be the person that you've got to go to get that information. You should be able to get access to information to support your own development, your own growth, and your own improvement moving forward. And that was part of the reason why I wrote the book The Trouble with Trauma. And I brought that out at the end of 2020, because 2020, with all of the stuff with COVID, just put too much pressure on therapists. Oh, thanks, Michelle. I appreciate that. You don't need to worry about that. But thank you, because this is the thing. It's one of those elements about trying to do the right thing, trying to do the best that we can to help others, and recognizing that when other people feel like it, they come along and they pull the rug out from under you when you're doing a particular kind of thing, then sometimes it can feel like what was it all for? And why would we bother? But what I want to say to you is, sometimes it's just a matter of recognizing that, the only way is up when we're at that point. And sometimes it's just a matter of somebody giving you that olive branch that you can grab onto and feel yourself kind of, pulling yourself out of that little doldrum hole, and moving forward. And Paul North, you did do that for me, and I will forever be grateful for it. And I'm ever grateful that, in talking about this, I hope that I can inspire you to also do something when we feel like we can't, that, finding that somebody comes along and just gives you that bit of support while you kind of get yourself back up and dust yourself off and work out what you're going to do next. But don't ever let anybody take the fire that's in your heart and squash it, or try and, snuff it out, because, you're here for a reason and a purpose. And I really believe that everybody has one. All right. So thank you for listening, and I really appreciate it. And watch this space, because there will be more good things to come. All right. See you soon.